So you built a $4 million portfolio. You worked hard, stayed disciplined, and made smart decisions to get to this point. But now questions start to shift. When can you actually retire? How much can you safely spend each year? And more importantly, will it all last? I've had successful clients come in confident that they were set for life, only to find out that they were planning to spend $300,000 a year with a portfolio that could realistically only support closer to 180. I founded the first and only certified fiduciary or trusted guide in the Middle East, and over the last 2 decades my team and I have helped hundreds and hundreds of successful, wealthy professionals retire in their 50s and 60s with absolute clarity, confidence and control. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: most people are making gut feel assumptions without any real plan. So in this video today I'm going to walk you through exactly how to answer the big questions. What will your retirement actually cost? How much can you safely spend each year without any fear of running out? And how do you build a plan that gives you the confidence to truly enjoy your wealth without the fear of going backwards? So before we talk about how to actually plan your spending, we need to clear up a few things that many people get wrong. Too often, people assume that retirement is just about hitting a number: 4 million, 6 million, 8 million, 10 million, whatever that target might be. But that's only the beginning. They still don't actually know when they can retire, or if they do, they're not sure how much they can safely spend without putting their future at risk. And more often than not, they underestimate how important it is to align their money with what they actually want from life. One couple came to us recently, both in their mid-50s, sitting on just over $4 million. They're assuming they need to work another 5 years, playing it safe. But once we ran the numbers, stress tested the different scenarios and mapped it all out in detail, they realized they could afford to retire immediately, with more than enough room to travel, to help their kids, and to enjoy the lifestyle that they'd worked so hard to build. Here's the thing: it's not just about how much you've saved, it's about how you use it that determines whether your retirement will be successful or stressful. Retirement isn't a single decision at all, it's a series of trade-offs. Each one needs to be tested and stress tested against your real goals, your lifestyle needs, and your tolerance towards risk. And what we found time and time again is that many people can actually retire far earlier, spend more, or give more generously than they've ever realized. They just don't know it yet because they haven't ever seen the numbers clearly laid out. And that's why having $4 million isn't enough on its own. This wealth has to be structured around your lifestyle. By the way, if you're watching this because you're in a similar position, we put together a free high net worth individual retirement checklist you can download below, and it's based upon the exact process that we use with clients to help assess retirement readiness, including spending and lifestyle trade-offs, so that you can stress test your own plan with confidence. The link's in the description below. So now let's look at how we actually do that step by step. One of the very first things we do with every client is to help them define what their retirement actually looks like. And this is where many people go wrong. They think retirement is just a date or an age, a line in the sand where they stop working. But they haven't thought deeply about what they're retiring into, only what they're retiring from. They haven't defined the lifestyle. They haven't mapped out what their days will look like, what brings them joy, what they want the next chapter in their life to really feel like. I worked with a client not long ago. He was 58, financially secure, and assumed he'd work until he was 65. But when I asked him why 65, he said, "Isn't that just what everyone does?" He'd never stopped to consider that he might actually want to stop earlier, or that he could. And more importantly, he hadn't thought about what he wanted his time, his energy, and his financial capital to go towards once work was off the table. So, before you run a single calculation, get very clear on your lifestyle vision. When do you want to stop working and why? What does your ideal day-to-day life actually cost? Not just the essentials like housing and food, but things that add real colour to your life like travel, hobbies, and upgrading your car, helping your loved ones, your family, or maybe even relocating. And don't fall into the trap of only planning for survival. You didn't build a multi-million-dollar net worth just to scrape by in retirement. List your lifestyle costs in two categories, the core ones and the optional ones. Do it in today's number. What's essential to run your life? And what would make it more fulfilling, exciting, and enjoyable to you? Now, that's the foundation of your plan, because if you don't know what life you're building towards, the numbers can't tell you anything useful. So once you define the lifestyle you want, the next step is to map out exactly what it will actually cost. And this is where a lot of people fall short. They think retirement expenses are just food, bills, and the odd holidays. But the real cost of retirement is always much more complex, and usually far higher than many people expect, especially with things such as inflation. Let's say you plan to spend $150,000 a year for 30 years in retirement. Now, that's $4.5 million in total. But what if you also want to gift $500,000 to your children, or set aside $100,000 for private medical costs later on in life? Suddenly, your $4 million portfolio starts to look a little bit tight. And that's even before we start adjusting things for inflation. That's where breaking spending down properly is really important. We don't just input one number and hope for the best. We break it down into real categories that reflect your life in the future. We organize your expenses into separate layers: core living costs, lifestyle extras like travel or hobbies, healthcare and insurance, both now and in the future. Then property-related expenses like home maintenance or potential relocation. And finally, one-off events: new cars, weddings, gifts to children, education funds, even emergencies. When we enter these into a model or financial life strategy, we're not just plugging numbers in, we're actually shaping a future story. A realistic picture of how you'll use your financial capital and when. Try breaking down your own spending plan into these different categories. Start with your core living costs, what it takes to run your household, and then add the lifestyle extras: medical expenses, property upkeep, and the one-off events. Use real numbers in today's terms. Generic budgets just don't reflect real lives. But when we layer in the right details, we can model it all clearly and see whether your $4 million can truly support the life you want. Once we've mapped out your spending, the next step is to look at where the money will actually come from. Most people assume that their portfolio is the only thing funding their retirement, but that's very rarely the full picture. In reality, you might have multiple income streams kicking in at different times, and failing to plan around them can lead to costly mistakes. I had one client who came in ready to retire at 58, thinking they needed to draw from their $4 million portfolio right away. But when we looked at the full picture, they had a government pension starting at age 60, rental income kicking in at 62, and a small business sale scheduled for 65. Once we'd mapped out all the detail, it turned out they only needed to draw heavily for the first couple of years, and after that their income picked up, and the portfolio could last significantly longer with much less pressure. Notice how we line up income sources year by year. We start with the obvious, things such as your investment portfolio, but when we layer in future pensions, those that might start at age 60, 65 or beyond, when we include rental property income, business income or consulting work, maybe even trusts or annuities, things begin to change. Some of this might be fixed, some of it might be variable, but every stream really matters. There are often gap years between when you retire and when other sources of income begin. That's when your portfolio has to do the heavy lifting. Understanding where those gaps are and how big they'll be is critical. Try listing every income source you expect in retirement. Don't just total it all up, but lay it out year by year. That lets you see exactly where your retirement income is strong and when your portfolio will need to step in. Once we can see that, we can model it all very accurately and make much smarter decisions about how exactly to draw wealth over time. Now that you've outlined your spending and mapped out your income, it's time to focus on your portfolio, the part that most people pay the most attention to, but often model the least effectively. The mistake that I often see over and over again is assuming a fixed monthly drawdown, say $10,000 a month. is fine, without actually testing whether that number is sustainable. They don't consider the timing of the income, how their withdrawals might fluctuate over time, or how market volatility could impact their overall plan, especially in the early years. I once worked with a couple who had their hearts set on drawing $240,000 a year from their $4 million portfolio. On the surface, that might seem doable, but when we ran the plan through our cash flow modeling software, it was very clear their spending would be much higher in the first 10 years, travel, experience, and ticking off the things on their bucket list, and then it would naturally taper off later. So instead of sticking to the fixed drawdown, we implemented a guardrail approach, flexible spending bands that adjust based upon market performance and life stages. That gave them much more freedom up front without putting their long-term financial security at risk. We then tested different drawdown rates, anywhere between 2% and 5%, depending upon age, portfolio structure, and what other income sources are available. And the software allows us to see how those drawdowns interact with investment returns, inflation, and different spending patterns. And we can visualize when you're drawing heavily, when you're coasting, and when you might have a surplus. It's not just about finding a number that works today, it's about ensuring that you have a number that still works in 10, 20, or 30 years from now, even when the market doesn't cooperate with your retirement. So don't ever rely on a rule of thumb like the 4% rule, but use a proper cash flow model. Visualize exactly how much of your lifestyle is funded by your income and how much is coming from your portfolio year by year. That clarity will give you confidence and the control to adjust if and when needed in the future. Now, here's a part that many people skip entirely, but arguably the most important. Many people build a plan based upon everything going right. Steady returns, no major surprises, a clean line from retirement to the end of life. But as we all know, life just doesn't usually work like that. Market crashes come at the wrong time. Inflation spikes, and you might face unexpected healthcare costs, or to decide to support your children financially, or do something else. And if your plan only works in the best case scenario, then it's not really a plan. Let's say you retire at 55 with $4 million, and in the first 2 years of retirement, the market drops by 25%. That early hit can do far more damage than the same drop later on in retirement. And this is called sequencing risk. And it's the most underestimated threat to retirement success. This is why stress testing really matters. We often run plans through what's called Monte Carlo simulation. Thousands of potential different market outcomes, including good years, bad years, and everything else in between. These simulations run automatically in the background, helping us to test how your plan holds up if markets do drop, inflation spikes, or you live longer than expected. The goal isn't to scare you, it's to show you whether your plan is truly built to last. We're not looking for perfection, but we are looking for resilience in retirement plans. We want to know how many of those different scenarios your plan succeeds in. That percentage, your probability of future life success, is what really tells us how robust your plan truly is. So, don't just look at one projection that shows everything going smoothly. Always ask, what if something goes wrong? Include both the best case and the worst case outcomes. Focus on probability and not fantasy. That's what gives you the real confidence to live fully, to sleep well, knowing your plan can take a hit and keep on going. So, now that you've got a plan, you've mapped out all of your spending, your income, your drawdown, and stress tested it all, but here's where most people stop. Where in fact, this is where it starts to get really exciting. Because once you've modeled the base cases, you can begin to ask much better questions. Not just, can I retire, but could I retire 3 to 5 years earlier? Could I afford to spend more in the early years whilst I'm still fit and active? What if I gifted money now with a warm heart rather than later with a cold hand? What happens if I work part-time, independent, continue earning for a few more years, not because I have to, but just because I enjoy it? What do I want to move towards in life? As I transition from the grind, the first mountain, to the second mountain. And this is what many people miss. They treat retirement planning like it's a one-off decision set in stone. But it's not. You have more flexibility than you think if you've done the detailed groundwork. As you can see, this is where we start modelling what-if scenarios. We can adjust the retirement age, tweak spending, layer in gifting or part-time income, and immediately see the impact. The plan updates in real time, so you can explore your choices without guesswork or fear. This is where true freedom lives. Not in the numbers, but in your options. It's knowing you can do what you do with those people you want to do it with whenever you want to do it. So don't settle for a single plan. Use proper planning tools and work with a caring professional to explore future possibilities. Retirement isn't about limits. It's all about choices. And with the right plan, you can have far more of them than you might think. After all the modelling, all of the analysis, and all of the planning, there's one final step that many people never get to. But just before I show you exactly what it is and how to put it into action, if you want to know exactly how your current plan holds up under pressure, you can book a call with our team. We'll walk you through the numbers, test your different options, and help you strategize for your retirement based upon your portfolio, your goals, and your timeline, and just use the link below to get started. So the final step is aligning your money with your life goals, because here's what many people do get wrong. They focus so much on preserving their wealth, they forget to enjoy it. My team and I worked with a client who had a $4 million portfolio and was living on just $70,000 per year. Not because they needed to be that conservative, but they were terrified of money running out. When we ran their numbers, it showed them they could truly safely spend between $150,000 and $180,000 a year and still leave behind a legacy that was important to them. The real risk wasn't ever running out of money, it was dying with regret. And this happens much more than you might think. People spend decades building wealth only to deny themselves the experiences, the relationships, and the impact that wealth was meant to support. They hold back on travel. They delay giving with a warm heart. They say no to things that they could easily afford, all because they've never seen the full picture laid out with absolute clarity. That's why once you run the numbers, and I mean really run them, it's time to start using them with purpose. Spend more whilst you're healthy enough to enjoy it. Give generously when it's most meaningful and you get to enjoy it. Create memories, not just bank balances. Use your wealth to build a life that feels truly rich and live richly on your terms. Many people who do run this process realize they could have retired years ago. They just didn't know the different signs or have the confidence to make that move. Because once you do understand your numbers and you stress test your plan and align your money with what matters most to you and your values, retirement stops being a risk and starts becoming an active choice. So if you've been wondering whether you're holding back for the wrong reasons, watch this video next where I break down the 10 signs you should retire earlier than you think. Because the real risk isn't running out of money, it's waiting too long to enjoy it.